please rise in body or spirit and sing with me our opening song, number 188, in the gray hymnal, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, causes a caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, causes a caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lakeland. I am Heather Norby. I am the spiritual life director for this fantastic congregation. And I use the pronouns she and her. Welcome to this sanctuary where we embrace the value of equity, declaring that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. In order to achieve equity in the world, we as Unitarian Universalists covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. So come, whoever you are, and be welcomed. Today's service will allow us to reflect on the practice of inclusion by honoring two of our Unitarian ancestors and their contributions to our faith and to this world. But first, our call to community, because in order to build community, we need love and connection, and that's your part, connecting by joining in all of the wonderful things that we have going on around here. Well, today we have potluck. Yay! And then after potluck, we have a board meeting. Yay! Okay. That will take place here in this sanctuary. I think we aim for 1 o'clock, right, Ken? Yes. 1 p.m. And so you are welcome. If you're not a board member, you're welcome to just come observe and see how things work around here. This Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. here in the sanctuary is Popcorn Theology. If you have questions, see Adam, but I believe the movie is called Amazing Grace. And so come on in and watch the movie and engage in some very thoughtful discussion, because Adam always provides us with thoughtful discussion. If you are interested in being in a small group, or you have ideas for small groups, please see Tim McLean, because he'd like to get some small groups started. And I'd like to say thank you to Vesal and the First Friday people. Yes? Yes, thank you. I have no doubt it was successful. Thank you for going out there. It's a lot of work to come pick up the tent and all of the stuff and set it up and greet people and tell them all about Unitarian Universalism.
That's the fun part.
And that's the fun part. And then break down the tent and bring it all back. So thank you so much to Vesal and Kat and Dorothy and Sherry and Catherine. Okay, and all these people that do this every month. Thank you for getting out the good news of Unitarian Universalism. All right. Please check the back of your order of service and our e-newsletter, which is published on Mondays, for more information about other events and the things going on around here. So Ben, let us create our sacred space by lighting our chalice.
Good morning, I'm Ben Basili, and I'm your worship associate this morning. I use the pronouns he and him. Grace and Lily are going to come up right now and light our chalice. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, The words are not behind me? Okay. All right, then we'll go with, all right. As we light this flame of hope, may our congregation become a kaleidoscope of souls and people. In the presence of this flame, in me, in you, in us, is an invitation to sit at the table. May we tend our soul fire through these challenging and trying times to open the hearts and minds of all who enter our doors. Please rise in body or spirit and let us sing hymn 123, Spirit of Life.
Well, this is the moment where I invite our young and young at heart to come forward. Today I have a fun book that Crystal had, and she gave to me, and I thought, aha, this is perfect for today. Oh, thank you for coming forward. The Magically Mysterious Adventures of Noel the Bulldog. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to sit down if that's okay. Y'all, look at how cool Crystal is. This is an autographed Gloria Estefan. It has a CD in it, too. Okay. Noelle peeked through the gates at her wondrous new world. With her Christmassy name and her own little girl, she wasn't that pretty, quite far from the best, with her brown brindle body and white spotted chest. With most of her features so oddly arranged compared to most bulldogs, she looked a bit strange. Welcome home, said the girl as she patted her head. Would you like me to show you around your new spread? Then 5 spotted Dalmatians, their legs long and lean, came bounding together like a well-oiled machine. Each one of them sniffed her and asked her to play, but then one barked, "You're different. Were you born far away?" "I flew in a plane over mountains and seas, like a bird flying over the tops of the trees." They barked, "To the fish pond, we'll race you, young pup." Noelle tried to follow, but couldn't catch up. My legs are too short, thought Noelle, disappointed. If these dogs have a club, there's no way I can join it. She sat by the pond as her eyes lost their twinkle, when suddenly up from below came a sprinkle. Then hundreds of fish, shiny, colorful, bright, swam up to the surface in joyous delight. "You must be the new doggy. Come with us and play. Let's go for a swim. We swim here all day." So Noelle dove right in, but then sank like a rock. The fish were all staring, their eyes wide with shock. Then they swam close together and lifting her high, put her back on dry land, and at once they all cried, "We thought everyone everywhere knew how to swim." So did I, said Noelle. That's why I jumped in. As she shook herself dry from her head to her toes, a firefly perched on the tip of her nose. What are you? Asked Noelle, sensing she was in danger. Was she going to be stung by this fuzzy-winged stranger? I'm sorry, Noelle, if I gave you a fright, but what looks like a stinger is really a light. We all have a gift, the small firefly chattered. I can light up the night, and my size doesn't matter. Said Noelle, but my coat and my color's not shiny or bright. I might feel I belonged if, like you, I could light. Then from 18 feet high, swaying tall as a tower, came the powerful voice of a giant sunflower. You're quite special, Noelle, with a look you can't beat. Dark and rich like the earth and like chocolate, so sweet. In the tallest of trees, branches scraping the sky, dressed in feathery glory, birds were perched way up high. They were squeaking and squawking with hardly a care. Noelle yelled, "Can we talk?" They took off in the air. I'm a failure, she cried. I can't do anything right. I can't talk to the birds and my tail just won't light. I can't swim, can't run fast, don't have shimmery colors. I'm afraid I will never fit in with the others. Y'all ever felt that way?
No, never.
Noelle. Yeah. Noelle sat on a stump as the sun said goodbye and the moon said hello in the starry night sky. Then the firefly spoke as her tail brightly beamed. You know, things are not always as bad as they seem. In the day I am only one more flying creature, but at night you can see my distinguishing feature. Perhaps things are not what you might have expected, but soon you will see we're all somehow connected. And just when Noelle thought she couldn't get sadder, the little girl came to see what was the matter. It's bedtime, she said. Did you have a good day? Then she picked her up, kissed her, and swept her away. In the little girl's arms, in a little brown heap, curled up comfy and cozy, Noelle fell asleep. And deep in her slumber, she dreamed of the day she'd find her mysterious, magical way. Snuggled warm in her bed, waking up was quite hard, but Noelle heard commotion outside in the yard. The Dalmatians were flustered, quite clearly upset. Noelle asked, what's happened? Can't be that bad, I'll bet. We were tossing our ball and it went way too far. They said, now we're afraid it's rolled under the car. Our legs are so long, there's no way we can fit. Since we can't get the ball, there's no choice but to quit. Don't do that, said Noelle. I will get you the ball. I can crawl under there with no trouble at all. With her short, chunky legs, young Noelle saved the day. Then they made up a game that all the doggies could play. That sounds sort of familiar. Noelle was so happy she'd gotten her wish. She wanted to share her good news with the fish. But the closer she got, the much louder she heard that the fish were all chanting one deafening word, help, 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 cried the fish as Noelle saw with dread how a fish out of water flopped around on his head. We were jumping for sport, the fish started to shout. He was jumping so high, by mistake, he jumped out. Noelle sprang into action. She knew what to do. Put the fish in her mouth, but make sure not to chew. So she carried him gently and dropped him back in, and Noelle in that moment discovered her grin. The fish said, Noelle, you're a dog like no other. If it wasn't for you, we'd have lost our dear brother. The firefly circled Noelle as he cheered. I knew you could do it if you persevered. But hurry, Noelle, someone else needs your skill. The birds are so hungry they might soon fall ill. So Noelle to the kitchen ran off without warning to get what she'd seen in the pantry that morning. She fashioned a stairway with cans of baked beans, sacks of flour and rice, and a case of sardines. She pushed and she stacked with her strong little snout. She climbed and she climbed. Her legs almost gave out. But she snatched the seed bag with her little front teeth, dragged it out to the birds who awaited their feast, and then ripped it wide open and said, "By the way, I'll make sure that I get you some seeds every day." "Well, well, well," said the birds, now completely impressed. "You don't cease to amaze us, Noelle. You're the best." Everyone gathered around. She was showered with praise, and they sang of her magical, mystical ways. Noelle just lit up. She was bursting with pride. Her strength and true beauty had come from inside. And though viewed from the outside you couldn't quite tell, there was never a dog like the dog named Noelle. Aww, the end. Isn't that nice? Do you think that you have magical, mysterious ways? Yeah. We all have magical, mysterious ways. And they're all different from each other, right, Jen?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, before you, are y'all going out?
Going out?
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Before you go out, you're welcome to take some stones in honor of your magical, mystical ways to help give you the strength and know that you are loved and cared for. And then you go out and do your thing. Thank you. As Ben lights our healing candle today, I offer you this prayer. Spirit of life and love, give us the strength to resist the forces that are tearing at the fabric of our humanity. Let us heal the wounds that cause us to dehumanize and other one another and forget that we each, indeed, have magical, mystical ways. Instead, Spirit of life and love, please call us to the ways of inclusion, equity, and justice. Let us heal one another with love and care, for we are all sacred beings. Amen. Russell Lehman wrote, "Inclusion isn't about being invited to sit at someone else's table. It's about building a new table together where each person's voice and presence matter equally." Our ritual of the sharing of joys, concerns, and sorrows embodies the belief that there is power in weaving our lives together so that we may build a better world, one that honors the experiences of all of us. In our Joys and Sorrows book, you are able to write any significant joy or sorrow occurring in your life that you would like for the congregation to know. Today is February 9th. This is a joy from Dorothy. She says, "I've had restless leg for 10 years. It affects my sleep. A pharmacist, Tom Roberts, told me to add potassium salt to hot water. I've had no problems in 2 weeks. That's awesome. Thank you. It's great when we can can help one another. That's what we're here for. So I invite you now to come forward for our ritual of joys and sorrows. You may take whichever stone or stones feels right to you and drop it in the bowl, connecting to others and feeling the power of being together. And Petra will put some stones in for folks joining online, on Zoom or streaming services. Good morning. Thank you. Really fills my heart with so much joy to see all of you this morning. So whatever your stories are that are floating together in the water, blessings of love to all of you.
Here we gather, tucked back in this friendly neighborhood between the beautiful tall pines. We are a community of people who have arrived from many different paths, yet we seek a common goal: to bring more love to a hurting but beautiful world. As Unitarian Universalists, we aspire to reach this goal through our shared values, one of which is the value of generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. This we can only do together, and our monetary gifts are essential to supporting our endeavor. Our ushers will now pass the plate.
Thank you all for your contributions. Well, I have another story for you today. This one is a nonfiction story, and I found it in our adult curriculum on the UUA website. Did I write down? Harvest the Power is the name of the program that this is from, and it's a story about a woman named Fanny Barrier Williams, who was born on February 12th, 1855 in Brockport, New York. Fanny was an American educator, civil rights and women's rights activist, and she was the first Black woman to gain membership to the Chicago Women's Club. She became well known for her efforts to have Black people officially represented on the Board of Control of the World's Columbian Exposition in 1893. She was also a musician, a portraitist, and studied foreign languages. And she's one of our Unitarian ancestors. So this story was written by Gal Forsyth Vale with Jermaine Kripe for the UUA. Fanny Barrier was furious. She was embarrassed and hurt and disgusted. She had discovered that no matter how talented, educated, and polite she was, her race made her a second-class citizen. In Washington, D.C., where she was a teacher, she had decided to take a painting class. But she discovered that her art instructor had erected screens to separate her from the white students in the class. Thinking that things would be better in the North, she enrolled in a music school in Boston. The principal there told her that she had to leave the school because some white students were threatening to quit if they had to go to school with a Black person. Fanny Barrier had a lot of gifts. She was a talented painter and pianist, a good student, and a good friend. She had grown up in Brockport, New York, a mostly white town outside of Rochester, during and after the Civil War, where she felt accepted as a social equal. It was only when she set out to do something large or out of the ordinary in her life that she smacked right up against a system that said she was of less value than white people. But it was also when she bumped up against the system that she found her greatest gifts and then used them to help people whose lives were more difficult than her own. Fanny Berrier met and married Samuel Williams, a young lawyer. They moved to Chicago, where they lived on the South Side, a predominantly black part of town. She made friends with many people, black and white, who were interested in the arts, music, and discussions about all sorts of interesting things. She also worked hard to help those in her community, especially the black women who, because of prejudice, were unable to find jobs to help support their families. Because she had so many white friends, she decided to try to persuade some of them to offer jobs to skilled black women. She soon discovered that just because a white person was kind to her as an individual did not mean that they would give black women a chance to prove themselves as workers. One manager, when Williams asked him to hire black women, went on and on about how his parents raised him to believe that slavery was wrong. But when she pressed him to offer black women jobs, he said no. No, it would be too disruptive to his business. When she reminded him that his Christian faith called him to do better, he disagreed. During her years in Chicago, Fanny Berrier Williams met and became friendly with Jenkins Lloyd Jones, minister of the Unitarian Church of All Souls. She joined the church and was active in the establishment of the Abraham Lincoln Center. As the city of Chicago prepared to host the 1893 World's Fair, Williams's minister organized a World's Parliament of Religions. This would be a gathering where people from all over the world could learn about one another's religions. Fanny Berrier Williams discovered that there were no women of color on the planning team, and she pushed hard to fix that. Eventually, she was invited not only to be part of the organizing team, but also to speak at the gathering. In her moving speech entitled "Religious Duty to the Negro," she demanded that churches do a better job of practicing what they preached when it came to justice for black people. Because of this powerful speech, Fanny Berrier Williams became famous. Soon, she was invited to deliver her message everywhere. She became a paid speaker, sometimes pairing her speeches with a piano concert. Fanny Berrier Williams, whose gifts and talents were many and who was herself financially comfortable, never forgot the black women whose paths were even more difficult than hers. All her life, she fought the racism that kept black people from the jobs and education they needed to survive so they could offer their own talents to the world. Today, 3 days before what is her 170th birthday, we honor the memory of Fanny Berrier Williams and her place among our UU ancestors who taught us what the practice of inclusion looks like. So let us sing. Let us sing her memory, the memory of her work, her love, and her hope into being with a hymn written by a contemporary of hers, the African-American poet William Stanley Beaumont Braithwaite. This is number 351 in the Great Hymnal, called "A Long, Long Way the Sea Winds Blow."
And we must
else had a birthday on February 12th. Anybody remember who that is? Yeah? Not the person I'm thinking of. I don't know when his birthday was, but I know it's President's Day this weekend. Who else had a February 12th birthday? I'm sure you're close, Judy. Oh, come on, I quizzed you like 2 years ago. You forgot already? All right, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin has a birthday on February 12th, and he is also someone we often consider as a Unitarian Universalist ancestor of sorts. Although Darwin grew up nominally Anglican, Darwin's mother, Susanna Wedgwood, was part of a Unitarian family and took Charles to a Unitarian chapel before her death in 1817. In 1831, when Darwin went aboard the HMS Beagle at 22 years of age, he thought of himself as a Christian. However, as he wrote in his autobiography, "Over the years, disbelief crept over me at a very slow rate, but was at last complete." Darwin's work had a huge influence on theology in Christian churches, for better or for worse, as certainly many found it in conflict with their biblical beliefs and consequently lashed out at his theory of evolution, hardening their fundamentalist stance. But some embraced it, including the Unitarians. In fact, Darwin's scientific research heavily influenced Unitarian theology. In the late 19th century, a scientific theism with biological evolution at its foundation was embraced by Unitarians, many of whom were turning towards a humanist worldview with an understanding of the universe as an evolving organism and God as a force of infinite intelligibility within the universe. That's an important word, within the universe, not outside. Darwin's research prompted other scientists to dig into human origins and discover that indeed, we are all a part of one big human family, all of us with a common origin in Africa. As one minister explained in a 2009 UU World article, the spiritual implication of this realization is that we should live together in love and caring, be tolerant of our differences, and take responsibility for one another. And so while this is still true in 2025, it seems a bit theologically shallow for the world we find ourselves in today. We face unprecedented challenges, and if we are to use biological evolution to undergird our theology, we need to find the parts of it that push us beyond we are all one human family. As seekers of truth, we need to dig deeper into the theory of evolution and discover the processes that have supported life on this planet, to find a way to co-create with these processes so that life can thrive. And so what a joy it is that Ben Basili, our UUCL member and lay worship leader today, has cultivated some wisdom for this sort of spiritual adventure and is generously offering it to us today. Ben.
Thank you, Heather. There are so many distinguished Unitarian forebears going back to that same period of time, and I know many of you know, but people like Florence Nightingale, Dorothea Dix, Henry David Thoreau, Walt Whitman, and so many others. And Darwin is one that I am paying attention to. I was eager to take part in today's service, as I've had a keen interest in that subject, Darwin and evolution in general. A part of that for me was that Darwin and his horrible, heretical, and very, very bad theory were mightily condemned from every corner of the fundamentalist universe when I was a young fundamentalist boy growing up here in Central Florida. Well, although I took a lot of that in during my formative years, I wasn't fully convinced and took seriously the things I learned in science classes, both in high school and later in college at an extremely Christian university. So in my college years, the process of questioning some of the things I had been exposed to as a younger fellow began to pick up speed. the way that worked out for me, practically speaking, is that I stopped trying to harmonize the things that I believe to be true about theology and faith on the one hand, and the things I believe to be true about science and how we got here on the other. Finding Unitarian Universalism in 1992 was such a good thing for me in so many ways, and it was a natural step because I had parted ways about 20 years before that with the really hardcore fundamentalist evangelical churches who believed that the Bible was true and accurate and authoritative for true believers in every area of life, including science. Now, I want to make it clear that I don't really have any scientific cred. I'm just a serious lover of science, whether it's about space, exploring the cosmos, what's happening to our climate here on Earth, or literally how on Earth we got here, how we got here on the Earth. And I say we, meaning humans, of course, but all those other species too. You know, how did we get here? Well, that is huge. That's a big deal. And it's something I've paid close attention to for a long time, even though I'm not a scientist. I think we'd all agree that that's pretty important stuff. Now, there are two things about Darwin and evolution writ large that seem important enough to me today that I want to briefly highlight them. There are two thoughts that tend to come up often when other non-scientists like me, who also appreciate how important that stuff is, try to wrap their mind around that. Now, you might think of these as myths or misunderstandings regarding evolution, or just specifics that aren't very well grasped or understood by everyday lay folk like me. Well, there's a myth that Darwin postulated, or that evolution postulates, that humans descended from monkeys or apes, and that's not so. Evolution posits that humans and apes evolved from a common ancestor, probably in the Miocene epoch, maybe between 5 and 23 million years ago. So my way of putting that into layperson's terms would be to say that evolutionary science isn't trying to tell us that our mothers were gorillas, but that we and gorillas are cousins, that we evolved from a common ancestor. The thought of me being a 30 millionth cousin to Gertie Gorilla does not bother me in the least. By the way, I had a really big argument with an employer about that once quite a few years ago who, well, never mind. We're not even going to go there. Another aspect of evolution that sometimes isn't that well understood is how we lay folk often conflate the ideas or the concepts of survival of the fittest with survival of the strongest. That universal aphorism or buzz phrase, only the strong survive, is always lingering there in the background. By the way, survival of the fittest was actually a phrase first used by Herbert Spencer. Spencer was a 19th century economist, a contemporary of Darwin's, and he was trying to equate Darwin's ideas about natural selection to economic theory. Well, Darwin liked Spencer's use of that actual phrase, and so he later included it in revisions of his earth-changing tome on the origin of the species, beginning with the 5th edition. You know, in my view, it's really all about adaptability. I think that's what lies at the very core of that. It's about the organism or the critter's fitness or suitability to its environment. An example of being fit to adapt and survive, and therefore to be able to successfully pass on your genetic material without necessarily being the strongest or the king of the hill, can be found in an excerpt that I'm going to read for you now from writer Thomas de Michel on his site called fact/myth.com. Mr. de Michel writes, "All but one species of mole rats lives and feeds underground to avoid predators. Given this, mole rats are typically small. To be the fittest mole rat, you have to either be small enough to fit in the hole or have another solution to the vulnerability of life on the surface of the ground. The big-headed mole rat tunnels like other mole rats, but actually eats and lives above ground. Well, how does it not get eaten? It partners with a tiny bird, the moorland chat, that warns the mole rat when his main predator, the Ethiopian wolf, is near. In return, the big-headed mole rat digs up grubs for the bird. To be fair, the mole rat also has some pretty big teeth that could hurt the wolf. So its size and strength are not totally irrelevant. Still, the point is clear. While most moles survive by being small, the big ones survive primarily through intelligence and teamwork. Being strong is at best a secondary helper trait in the case of this big-headed mole rat. Well put, Mr. DeMichel. So, as far as how we and all those other critters got here, to me, in my view, it's more about fitness, suitability, and being adaptable, as opposed to merely having extraordinary or overpowering strength. In evolution, strength counts, it's not irrelevant, but adaptability and cooperation, as we see here with Mr. Mole Rat and his avian BFF, the moorland chat, can put one in good position to live, thrive, and survive. Now, is it a big deal this morning to take a few minutes to think about this kind of stuff? Think about some of the things we know because Darwin and Spencer and others got the ball rolling in the mid-19th century? Well, I think it is a very big deal. For quite a few years now, we have been entering a time of rapid change in our society, and as you no doubt know, in every corner of the earth. A lot of these changes are huge and are very, very stressing. It goes far beyond mere window dressing or preferences and extends to things that can be life-changing and, quite literally, matters of life and death in some cases. Life and death for some species, some of our fellow travelers on the earth. And the health and vitality and the very survival of some marginalized communities of humans could also be at stake, and I think they are. I don't think that's overstating where we find ourselves today. Now, I'm not pretending to lay before you a thorough outline of exactly where we are when we see these changes coming. I cannot offer a comprehensive solution or strategies about where we're going. But I do know this. The traits and characteristics and strategies that got our species this far will be key going forward. Strength is not irrelevant. It's a good trait, one that's we sometimes call an evolutionarily positive trait, meaning it gives you a greater chance of passing on your genetic material, of surviving. And there will certainly be times when we'll have to foster that strength, build our strength, gather our strength, and very important, when we'll have to share our strength. Some days I have none at all, and I'm going to need some of yours, and it can go both ways, obviously. Now, there will be times where we absolutely have to stand and fight. We must stand firm on our UU principles, including the worth and dignity of every human person and the right of people to use the democratic process in matters that affect them. Those are the two that really stand out for me today while we're on that subject. But let's also remember that sharing, communication, cooperation, and adapting suit us very well and will also be essential as we move through this upheaval and these rapid changes that are coming at us at this point in the evolution of humanity and of human society. Strength, fitness, solidarity, cooperation, and adaptability need to be tools in your bag as we move forward together.
Say thank you. Thank you. It's really been such a joy to hear from so many lay leaders the past month and a half, and there's more coming up. Well, we are a faith firmly rooted in science, reason, and truth. A truth that grows and expands with scientific knowledge. A truth that teaches us to center ourselves in love and to ever widen our circle of inclusion. That gives me hope. Ben's reflection today gives me hope. We find ourselves living in a country with an administration that thinks that strength means brute force and oppression and deception of the people. Tangled up with this perception of strength is manipulation, gaslighting, illusions, and the conjuring up of conspiracy theories. Science and history as well tell us that this approach is rooted in a distorted worldview and a false theology, and that those things do not win the evolutionary race, so to speak. To deny science, to deny the truth about our existence, is to deny our own flourishing. And so I hold on to a hope that we who embrace the gifts of science and of history will prevail. Will you join me in that hope? Can we all join together to lift up truth as it ever advances and to shine light upon the processes of evolution and of culture, the ones that have supported the thriving of life? Together, can we share the good news of a Unitarian Universalist theology that strength is not forceful necessarily, but rather strength takes form in fitness, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It takes form in solidarity, cooperation, and adaptability. Fanny Barrier Williams asked in 1893, just 34 years after Darwin's Origin of Species was published, what can religion do to further advance the condition of the colored people? And she answered, more religion and less church, less theology and more of human brotherhood, less declamation and more common sense and love for truth. Williams experienced racism and sexism, and she was driven by an understanding of just how hurtful, disconnecting, and unloving such attitudes and behaviors were. She knew this unloving approach was being preached in too many churches with dangerous theologies across the country, and so she sought action based on the emerging scientific truths that connect us as one human family. She worked to organize people and to do the good work of building a new way together. She was centered in love, and Fanny Barrier Williams modeled how to cross boundaries, widen circles, and practice inclusion. Charles Darwin's work crossed boundaries as well. His work was vital to our understanding of the blessing of diversity and the value of inclusion. That we are stronger and more resilient when we include and value a variety of people and their magical, mystical ways, right? As Noel the bulldog, with a variety of gifts and talents and worldviews. And then together, we build a thriving world. As we approach the February 12th birthdays of these two important UU ancestors, let us honor the hard work of Fanny Barrier Williams and Charles Darwin by not giving up. I know it's hard right now, and we may feel pulled towards disconnecting ourselves from what's going on and from each other, but that's what the forces of brute strength want. They want us to take the easy path towards complacency, the one that allows us to ignore suffering. And so giving up may feel like relief, but it does not honor the truth, and giving up will not lead to the thriving of life, including our very own lives. Giving up really isn't the easiest path. It's a lonely path. Giving up is not the trail that our ancestors have laboriously blazed for us so that we can be together like we are right here, right now, in this place. Giving up is the trail that the deniers of truth want us to take. But we are not going to take that trail. We will carry on together, centered in love, practicing inclusion in a joyful sort of trailblazing way, all of us co-creating with the universe, this ever-evolving organism. Together, we will prevail because we have partnered with the forces of that infinite intelligibility. Together. Thank you, and Ben will read our closing words.
This is To Make New Shapes by Reverend Rod Richards. May we practice sacred flexibility, letting go of geometric purity when it comes to our circles, so that we are unafraid to draw them wider, stretch them longer, and find joy in the task of rearranging. Let us be fearless in our willingness to make new shapes so that we may be accountable to people who have not found us yet, so we may welcome those who thirst for our healing message, so that we may engage with our people and our partners the work before us, to save our lives as citizens and human beings. Go forth and make some new shapes.
And before you go forth, we will sing, of course. So rise and body or spirit. We're going to learn a new song. This one's called We Shall Be Known. You might have gotten a piece of paper, but the words are also up there. And I think it's a song that we'll be singing in the future, probably next week with Helen. And so, yeah, we're not going to sing it perfectly, but we're going to keep learning. It's a good song. All right.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these eyes. We'll be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds that change a life and feed within the earth. It's time now. It is time now that we rise. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these eyes. Shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds that change a life and lead within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we fly. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great journey we shall learn to lead in love. In this great journey we shall learn to lead in love. In this great journey we shall learn to lead in love. In this great journey we shall learn to lead in
All right.
We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world.